This is Dominic Sale. I'm with the Technology Transformation Services at GSA. Thank you for having me today. I'm here to talk to you, provide a keynote, and I've talked with my friend Bill Hunt from earlier, and thanks Bill for the shout outs to TTS and a lot of things we're doing. Bill's been a great partner. ATARC's been a great partner in promoting what we're trying to do with TTS. And the mission of TTS is to ensure that we have a government that is responsive to the American people, that we're using technology, leveraging technology to improve the lives of the American people and the employees of government. Part of how we do this is by building a digital government. So building a modern digital government sounds nice and easy and even obvious, and based on recent events around the government to improve the speed and quality of public services. But when something like the pandemic hits, it really puts modern and digital to the test. And so modern infrastructure can be the difference between receiving a small business loan when you need it or not, between having a secure environment for telework so employees can work home effectively or not. So TTS has been playing a critical role in the pandemic response. But I want to stress that it's only been because we have the tech, because tech for resilience is baked into our DNA. So today I want to talk a little bit about TTS, the pandemic, our response to it, from jumping in and firefighting from the early days, how we've helped build capacity since the advent of COVID-19 and the impact on our country, and then talk a little bit about the future of TTS and where what we've learned from what's happened thus far, and where I think this will take us in the future. So I think that first off, when COVID hit, it activated something that is known as Emergency Support Function 15 of the National Response Framework. This is a partnership led by Department of Homeland Security. And what it does is it activates a set of agencies whose job is to provide information to the public in times of emergency and crisis. So from the everyday to the time of crisis, USA Gov's contact center serves the public and answers questions about the federal government from the public. So we're dedicated to providing the public with information. It's a priority of the team to ensure that communication is ongoing as the public looks for answers. USA Gov was designated by DHS as one of the official lanes of communication to support the national response to COVID-19. USA Gov has been maintaining a landing page cataloging all government information, all government activities related to COVID in both English and Spanish. And what we do is we amplify. We try to translate to make government information accessible and amplify that information from our key partners across the government. So if you think of DHS or CDC, all the key players. And we use a lot of channels that we have already established, social media, email, and handling an unprecedented number of calls. And we've been handling an unprecedented number of calls to our call center. And still, volume is still up, although it's started to trail off now. To date, our web pages have been viewed by more than 3 million times. And the USA Gov contact center has received more than 259,000 questions from the public. We were fortunate that we had already plans to use IVR technology. This is a technology integrated voice response that allows us to offload some of the volumes for simple questions, so we don't have to use a live call taker. That was fortuitous timing for us. It really enabled us to handle the volume at a time when it could have been crushing for us. So that was both lucky and fortunate. It was part of our plans in building and part of what we did as an agency and as an organization to put into practice those things that we know are important for the government of the future as we're building out this modern digital government. I'm also proud of the fact that those call takers were quickly moved to off-site, working from home, like many of us in the federal government, to protect their safety. And we seamlessly transferred those call takers from facilities to their homes. And hopefully none of the members of the public noticed that. TTS as an organization has provided over 10,000 work hours. I think it's grown since the last couple of weeks. I think we're around 13,000, and up to 20% of our talent pool to tackle rapid federal emergency response. And we've done this 100% virtual. So since mid-March, the entire GSA organization virtually has been working from home. Fortunately for us, the transition was largely seamless. We have a nationwide footprint as an agency, and we also and that has allowed us to operate virtually already in many ways. So this shift was fairly seamless for us, and especially for members of our team, including in particular 18F, who are really a virtual organization. Most people in 18F do work from their homes virtually full time. So as an organization, TTS and GSA, I think really demonstrated early on, and we were leaders in that quick pivot from an in-person environment to a virtual environment. Of course, we've learned a lot, as the rest of government has, of how to, from the experience. It has not been easy on everyone, and especially with kids being home from school, it's been a challenge for our folks. I like to think that we had some of the best leadership around with Emily Murphy, how she has managed, how our organization as GSA and TTS have managed the transition has been remarkable. And I know our team has been really happy with how that's worked. And now we're talking about how to get back in an organized fashion that doesn't put people at risk unnecessarily. And so that's the next phase of this plan. Again, we've had a task force who've been very organized about that. So I'm pleased to say that we put it to the test. We performed remarkably well, and I know our leadership, and I am proud of that, how our team has done. The fact that we live in this kind of environment already and we understand it has been really helpful in our ability to serve our customers. So as an organization, TTS's customers are federal agencies. At the end of the day, though our objective, our mission is to work through federal agencies by teaching, by providing tools, through consulting services to improve the lives of the American people. And when I say the American people, I mean all of the American people. So a big part of our mandate is to make sure that we are reaching the entire spectrum of what the American public looks like. And that means we have to be very flexible, and we can't limit the channels to those of just a certain segment of society. So that's why, for example, the call center at USA Gov is extremely important in enabling our ability to reach those who may just only have a phone or don't know how to use a website to get to the information they need. So we have the ability to call. I have the ability to listen in on some of these calls. And during this crisis time, early on, it was really, it was both heartwarming and difficult to listen to some of the actual real American people calling in who have been directly impacted through unemployment, through inability to pay rent. And these are the kinds of things we deal with on a daily basis. So these are some of the unsung heroes of TTS. We don't hear a lot about the USA Gov team. Big kudos to them. The USA Gov both the USA.gov website and USA Gov call center have been on the front lines working hard from the beginning of this crisis. So in addition to another thing that's happened directly from the pandemic has been an increase in interest from agencies in the use of cloud technologies. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Fedramp program, for example. Fedramp authorizes cloud environments for use by federal agencies, as all agencies have moved entirely to to virtual environments. The demand on those services has increased significantly, and that did have a direct impact on our Fedramp team. We received well over 100 requests in terms of reusability on the Fedramp coming from all different agencies. And it actually helped us really push some of our metrics. So our authorizations, we've hit or come close to hitting our annual authorization targets this year as a result of the increased demands on our team. And these things, we didn't have, at least at the beginning, any additional funds to do this. This is a lot of people working around the clock, working hard to meet this initial demand. More indirectly and in response to our partner agencies has been what I call kind of the mitigation efforts. How do we do things, work with agencies who were mandated to carry out, for example, the CARES Act, or who are themselves facing increased volumes of requests from the public. So, for example, through login.gov, and I know Bill mentioned login earlier, and SBA has been one of our biggest partners. We partnered with SBA by launching our login.gov's multi-factor authentication capability for SBA's payroll protection program. So this is their lender gateway is used by small and medium-sized businesses to request loan guarantees, and it's facilitated to date more than $500 billion, and yes, that's trillion with a T, dollars in funding to keep businesses afloat, with more than 302,000 logons. So you can imagine when the government is trying to push out this much money to stimulate the economy, to get those in needs, identity really, the importance of identity and being able to target those people who really deserve and need those funds becomes significantly poignant. So by enabling login, SBA is able to outsource the account creation and management of this MFA, multi-factor credential, quickly and efficiently, and protect their lender gateway. So to date, there have been over 135,000 users who've gone through login.gov at SBA since the beginning of April. Another service we provide, again, these are services I know, as Bill mentioned, we build them so agencies don't have to. There's no need to recreate the wheel. So identity authentication, identity proofing are things that we believe strongly that we have a lot of expertise in, that we encourage agencies to look at before they go out and use their own options. Another one of those services is cloud.gov. So during the pandemic, there's tremendous need by lots of agencies to provide user-friendly resources that allow the public to obtain authoritative information, answer frequently asked questions. So by building a brand new website and domain in the federal government, we know, those of us who are feds, I think a lot of you out there today, this is an unusually long process. A lot of requirements, there are security requirements, accessibility requirements, design requirements. But with Federalist built on top of cloud.gov, Federalist templates and cloud.gov backed hosting, and we had lots of customers approach us during this time, some very high profile. We were able to launch and build websites in less than 2 weeks, robust websites with extremely high volume, and ensure that the website would be able to handle the bandwidth, in some cases of 500,000 concurrent users. So providing information to the public during an emergency is critical. We know this. We take this seriously. We do this every day with USA Gov, and through cloud.gov and Federalist, we were able to help some of our key customers around government who are on the front lines of serving the citizens in the time of pandemic. So this shows that not only are these programs set up for ease of use for agencies, but we've also proven that they really help with speed as well. And we think that the costs are right for our agencies as well. Given the current conditions, we've all really had to rethink how the way we work as a government, how we support the public and our agency partners. And we really see this as an opportunity for each of us to take the innovations during this time and improve our mission critical services. And what has enabled us to work as a government is that use of cloud and the ability to work in virtual environments. So in addition to the increased volume on demand on Fedramp, for example, we have a huge suite of options now available to agencies, and we're hoping that agencies really take advantage of Fedramp. We have authorizations already created out there for many products, and we really want agencies to look at that list, look at the Fedramp marketplace, and find those products that will help you make sure you are able to deliver the services you need to in this new virtual environment. We need more of this moving forward and more agencies to get involved in cloud adoption. Fedramp is one great way to do that. We recently, through Fedramp, launched the Agency Liaison program, which is a major shift in how we build capacity agencies, and we think it'll serve as a multiplying force for cloud adoption. So this program has created a community of cybersecurity leaders from across government, and it institutes a train-the-trainer model. So a lot of what we try to do through TTS is scale up. We're a small team. We've only got 300 people. So a lot of our impact is done through working through our communities of practice, training the trainer. And we successfully launched this program back in late May. So now over 30 agencies participating in that virtual kickoff. So we're really excited about that ability to scale our capabilities with Fedramp through the Agency Liaison program. Another program you might not think of that has been really instrumental during the pandemic is 10X. So 10X is a way of funding ideas, good ideas, and particularly a lot of different ideas are coming up as a result of the pandemic. And we provide an ecosystem of support to those ideas to develop tangible solutions. So 10X uses a phased funding approach based on a startup studio and modern venture capital model to limit the risk and focus investment on the most promising ideas. So this is one example of how we can bring innovative ideas, innovative thinking to government. And the best part is you out there on the front line in the federal government can submit ideas. So most recently we took dozens of ideas from you, and we are working through and testing those ideas. And if we find out that we think they have legs, they're something we can take to the next phase, we increase the funding and we build out prototypes and models. And sometimes they become capabilities. Login.gov was born out of 10X, for example. We encourage you to go out there and look at those capabilities. The web design system, U.S. web design system, critical, key, required by the IDEA Act. It's a way to build mobile friendliness and accessibility. You don't have to design your own templates. We've developed these templates. Agencies I've talked to love using them. If you're not familiar, please reach out, because we think this is another way to kind of accelerate, get things up running quickly. And it's again, compliance out of the box. That's a big part of what we do in TTS. Digital analytics program, required on federal websites, has really helped us analyze mashing up digital analytics data with the search data from search.gov and the data we receive from site searches on USA Gov and USA Call Center. We're really on the front lines of understanding where the public is at any given moment. So we can be an early warning system for those agencies when the next pandemic rolls around or a hurricane, and really get to the heart of what citizens are concerned about. I think we need to do more in this area, and I think something I'm committed to is really taking this information and proactively pushing it out to agencies so we can be the eyes and ears, or at least a set of eyes and ears out there to understand where the public is. We and our partners need to keep our eyes open around the next corner, what's coming next. The pandemic was a surprise, and it's really changed the way we've worked, and we will continue to work as a government. But it also has provided a great opportunity to rethink the way we serve the public and do things that we do. So how will automation, data intelligence, even quantum computing impact on how services are delivered? These are the kinds of questions we are asking as an organization and we'll continue to ask. We want to stay ahead of those challenges. It's our job here at TTS to help agencies not just prepare, but thrive in any uncertain environment. So the thing about innovation, is that it doesn't have to be a disruptor. Innovation can and should become a routine part of our organizations, and innovation mission work hand in hand. So it's through technologies like two-factor authentication that we can help small businesses access the funding they need. It's through secure cloud infrastructure that we can help our employees can work at home with confidence, seamlessly, continuing to serve the American people and the taxpayers. So I'm going to leave you with one piece of advice. Think about how emerging technology as a tool and not an end state. And this viewpoint fosters the creativity and capabilities needed to inform and empower our people, both our federal workforce and our public. So TTS will never stop innovating. We want to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to technology. And our team would love to talk to you about how we can help, either in response to the current pandemic crisis or to lay out what your digital organization looks like in the future. Big or small, we have a wide range of capabilities, possibilities, options, products, services. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to come over or speak virtually over Zoom and talk more about what we can do for you. So thank you, ATARC. Thank you for your time. I know I've run a little over. I've really appreciated this opportunity, and I hope everyone stays safe out there and uses this opportunity to really innovate and drive government forward. I think we're in a unique time and place, and the federal workforce, especially when it comes to technology, is well positioned to take a giant leap forward as a result of this. So thank you all, and take care.
My name is Tom Suter, and I'm the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. And with us today, we have Tyler Colton, who's a strategic account manager for federal at Smartsheets. Welcome, Tyler.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yep. Looking forward to your presentation. I'm actually very familiar with your product. We use it at ATARC, and it really helps with the workflow. So I'm looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, Tom. We're going to go ahead and jump right into our content for today. I appreciate Tom and the ATARC team for having us. So what we're going to talk about today, a little bit about Smartsheet, but hopefully a little bit more about kind of today's changing kind of technology ecosystem in the enterprise, and really how do we help support federal agencies and customers continue to be productive in a dynamic enterprise. And a little bit of research that we've done and the industry's done that I think is important to understand when we talk about what a dynamic workplace and a digital work environment are really built around. And as industry and the market and the world have really become rapidly changing and evolving, the work ecosystem has changed along with it. And there are a couple factors that we think are super important for the audience today. One of them that you see on the screen is this concept of fluid work. What we have found and what the market has found is that the vast majority of things that happen in an organization are really unstructured. And we'll talk about how those things are organized as it relates to technology systems, but this need for fluid, reactive, ever-changing work to be accomplished in an ecosystem that's moving faster, that's more complex, that's required to be more agile, is really one of the core tenets of what a dynamic workplace is. The other one is the people that are involved, and what we are seeing and what the federal market sees and the market as a whole is that this concept of a citizen-led workforce is really becoming prevalent, right? The stats you see on the screen is really in a few years, those kind of citizen developers or knowledge workers or whatever you want to call them will outnumber professional developers in an organization 4-to-1. And how an enterprise goes about technology strategy and providing solutions and managing work really needs to be hinged on making those people successful and productive. Just a little bit of kind of market research that we talk about, and I think some of the things that we're excited to be supporting as the market kind of creates a new place here. And the people you see on the screen are really putting out more and more research around this concept of the digital workplace and the dynamic work environment. The analyst industry calls it collaborative work management. And that's really what our focus is on in helping define that market. But you see a couple kind of core tenets there around the new ways of working and systems of work, and really focused around the ability to empower workers to execute and achieve things in a single platform. And we'll talk about how this has changed and evolved, but really the market being defined as we speak, and Smartsheet being seen as a leader. And we'll talk a little bit more about how these things match up. I don't really need to belabor the situation that everybody's in with the COVID pandemic. Everybody's has challenges, and everybody's in a situation that's not ideal. You see some of the stats up here about work from home and negative impacts, but really what this, for our purposes today, has provided is really a catalyst to this market to operate more quickly, to become in the forefront of more people, to really require organizations to change rapidly. And the market that we've been helping define over the last 15 years really starting to become even more prevalent in the situation we're in. So a little bit kind of into the details here, just as we'll bring this back to kind of how we see organizations solving problems, but kind of the traditional approach that enterprises have taken in this world is what you see on the screen. You kind of have this stack being kind of crystallized over the last 50 years, right? And it's been approached this way for a long time. So you have at the top of the screen your kind of traditional systems of record, right, which are important to organizations. They're mission critical in how they operate. Your ERP, CRM, and ITSM solutions. Those things really meant for both the storage of data and for the employees or the workforce in that organization to transact with, right? I need to buy a widget. I need to know where that widget is. Those types of things, and typically pretty linear and rigid and heavy, right? And then the bottom side of the screen where your traditional employees have had the ability to manage their own work, right? Inside of email, documents and calendar systems, kind of the new wave of collaboration and communication tools with Dropbox and Box and Slack and Zoom, all being available, and really the workforce being, kind of forced into that area to find ways to accomplish their work. Again, kind of going back to what we're talking about, the split here is important, and what we see is, that 60-40 split, where the majority of the work in an organization actually happening at the bottom, and less of it happening inside of systems of record. So really what's emerged over time is this middle layer, and what we talked about in kind of the dynamic and digital work is really starting to become more prevalent and emerging. And so as people within an organization are being forced to adapt and operate more rapidly and more agile, they're looking for systems and solutions that can help them do that. Really, they're turning more increasingly to technology, and in our enterprise ecosystem, that represents some challenges. You have a lot of kind of BYOA, or bring your own application stuff happening inside of a workforce. People turning to things that are not improved, things that are not built for security, things that are not really tied to enterprise IT strategy. And that represents challenges that I think everybody's probably familiar with. And you start to create silos, you start to create kind of application redundancy and a bunch of challenges that happen along with that. And really what people really need, and what an organization really needs, is a solution that fits into this middle layer and really solves for that equation at scale. And a little more kind of on what we see as the common approaches to this dynamic work. You see on the left side of the screen some of the things that I think the market is hinged on, and we'll get into these a little bit as we go. But the concept of the top side of the screen of requiring things that are secure, that are scalable to an organization, that unify data, and things that are important to the bottom, the work execution and the employees, about being adaptable and collaborative to their needs, being able to drive solutions from a user seat and not from a developer seat. And the kind of the traditional ways these things have been solved have challenges, and kind of those things that are focused on the top side with the systems of record and heavy BPA and RPA and workflow management solutions, your traditional project and program management solutions, really being challenged at the bottom side, right? And hard to configure and expensive and time consuming. And then those traditional productivity tools like email and calendars and spreadsheets not really being aligned to the top side of the screen. One of our biggest customers as a federal organization is NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And a quick kind of use case story here that we've seen play out in real life is NOAA has and I'm sure if anybody operates in IT in the federal government, there are requirements around how you report on initiatives and investments related to IT spend. So NOAA has a council that manages that work. They're called the Program Management Council, the PMC. And before Smartsheet was introduced, they managed that entire process in PowerPoint. So kind of that traditional productivity tool option where every single week, and NOAA has anywhere from 50 to 70 of these kind of strategic projects in IT running at any time. Every single week, a person would need to build a PowerPoint file with the status of their particular projects and programs. It would take several days a week, right? 25, 30% of a person's time to manually report on those projects. And that created a whole drag in the organization. And generally, by the time they get into a meeting where they're talking about the status of that program, all of that data is outdated. It's all not correct. It was fingered in by somebody at a computer and not really driven from work. And now as we bring Smartsheet, and NOAA's a official kind of ATO user of Smartsheet, and then we're rolling out across the entire agency and bringing Smartsheet into that equation, we've helped solve that manual reporting problem and really put Smartsheet in as a way to manage the programs and projects in a more effective way. And then all of the reporting and statusing being driven automatically inside of the application off of their data, giving them more kind of real business context about how to make changes inside of the ever-evolving IT portfolio they have. And so I think the concept that we're getting at here, really what Smartsheet has tried to do is from the day we were started to try to solve for this dynamic work layer. And as the market starts to catch up and as the pandemic and other things have brought this more to light, we have really built Smartsheet to solve this issue from the start and really providing a way for the users and work to be accomplished in a platform that is adaptable, that can configure with change, that really users can adopt and drive, but also aligning to enterprise IT objectives and being secure and scalable, and really being able to bring the data from systems of record that needs to be interacted with into a common place. And kind of the point to make here is that a solution that fits into the dynamic layer, it really helps unify the enterprise technology stack, right? And being able to take transactions and data that are in core systems and allow users to execute and manage work at scale and bring those two things together. And we see that as being an important fit inside of this world. So just a little bit more about who Smartsheet is. We've been at this for a long time, as I said, as the market started to come around. One of the benefits that we see in our place here is that we've been at this for 15 years. We've built an application over time, and it's taken a lot of investment and work to get it where it's at to be kind of an enterprise class collaborative work management solution. We're publicly traded, we're growing rapidly. We have this slide's a little low, 1,750 employees in Seattle and Washington, here in DC, in Bellevue, or in Sydney, Australia, in London, and kind of spreading out across the globe. We're used by the 90% of the Fortune 100, a large amount of customer brands and across the world. And so now trying to take this success and this learning and what the commercial and private sector market have really started to become forward leaning in and trying to help bring this to the federal space and the government world. So we now have a team that's focused here in DC to support the federal government and kind of the surrounding ecosystem. We were selected, we applied for and were selected to the Joint Authorizations Board's Prioritize program for Fedramp. And if anybody deals with security in the cloud, you know what Fedramp is. The JAB is a body that kind of reviews applications they feel have scale and interest across the federal government, and Smartsheet was chosen there. We received our PATO from JAB in August of 2019, are now fully available for the federal market. We're built on AWS's GovCloud infrastructure, and obviously all of the federal compliance and NIST and FISMA requirements built right into Fedramp. We're also in process in DoD's compliance framework for IL4. If anybody from the DoD world is listening, obviously an important part of how the defense sector talks about cloud products, and we're gaining our authorization there. Obviously a lot to share. I wanted to make sure we didn't talk too much about us and more about what the challenges in the ecosystem were and how we align to them. If you're interested in learning more, feel free to swing by our virtual booth. We'll have some data, some leave behinds, have the ability to do demos and talk more about the product if that's important. We have a government landing page on smartsheet.com. Feel free to jump in there and you can ask questions to our team. We also have the Gov product, the FedRAMP authorized product, available for a trial. People want to test drive it and play around with it, we can make that available to you by request, and feel free to reach out. But thanks very much for listening today. Tom, thanks for having us, and hopefully this was impactful for everybody.
Thank you, Tyler. Want to thank you and the rest of the Smartsheet team for doing this. Very impactful. I love the ROI. I like doing meaningful work. That's a big thing in the government. So thank you for joining us on this webinar, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks very much, Tom. Appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Suter. I'm the founder of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, and I'm pleased to introduce Tony Holmes, Practice Lead for Solutions Architecture for the Public Sector at Pluralsight. How are you doing today, Tony?
Very well, thank you.
And Tony, I believe you're from Richmond, Virginia.
Yes, I am. Just south of DC. I spend a lot of time in DC, so it's great to be doing this.
Great stuff. Thanks for coming. And Pluralsight's been a partner with us for a while now, and Gil Azaroff at Pluralsight's on our board. So we're really looking forward to this presentation. We talked about it prior. It seems very, very interesting, and I think it'll apply to the government folks in the audience. Thank you, Tony. Look forward to it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. And I want to try and take the subject away from the technology for a little while and talk a little bit about how we think about taking our technology departments and how we skill those departments, how we take our organizations and bring them to the next level. And I think one of the problems that we have to do first of all is we have to address what those problems look like. So this is where you are at the moment. Right now, if I go to Indeed and I search for cloud on Indeed, a very popular recruitment site, if you're not familiar with it, right now there are 11,500 jobs in and around DC. That's within a 25-mile radius of DC for open jobs for cloud professionals. Okay. And that's really interesting when you think about it, because you're not just hiring against government. I mean, famously, Amazon's opening a new HQ in DC now, and there are a lot of other organizations that are have a strong presence in Washington, DC. And this isn't just a problem that's specific to DC specifically. You can do this in any metro area, whether it be San Fran, whether it be New York, whether it be Atlanta. Any of these areas all have very similar problems. And here's the thing. A part of the reason for this is the way that we approach recruitment. So I just want to talk a little bit about that for a second. So what I did was I went to Indeed and I pulled a job advert for a cloud platform intern. So this is really interesting because if you think about it, a cloud platform intern, typically not paid or very low paid. We don't expect much of them. It's an opportunity for us to start working with new potential employees and the employees to start getting a feel for what's going on in the ecosystem. So let's take a look at this job for a second. Okay, so the first thing that we wanted to see was we need a strong desire to gain experience in application and cloud architecture and related technologies, especially Google Cloud. That's pretty obvious. I mean, I think that's kind of what we would expect from an intern is that strong desire and that curiosity. Okay, so we can eliminate a few people, but there's still a lot of people there. Let's take a look at the next thing. Experience with knowledge of one or more databases, Oracle, MySQL. Okay, we can assume that that's something that's not unusual either. So we're going to lose a few more people. Okay, and as we go through, we start adding to things. Experience and knowledge with programming languages. Okay, that's going to get rid of a few more people. Then we've got experience with knowledge of various tools and technologies, Elasticsearch, MongoDB. And what we're starting to do is we're starting to reduce the candidate pool by a significant amount here. And ultimately, what you end up doing for this job, which is essentially a cloud intern, is you end up with this laundry list of skills and qualities and things that you need. And essentially what we're trying to do here is we're trying to hire for the Goldilocks candidate. Now, I don't mind telling you, I've been working in IT for over 20 years. And I'm actually a certified cloud architect on the Oracle platform. And I'm looking at this intern job and I'm thinking I'd probably be uncomfortable about applying for this myself. Okay, so here's the problem. The problem is that when we're not sure how to approach a problem, what we do is we end up finding ourselves in an area of discomfort. And then what humans do naturally when we're in an area of discomfort is we try to resolve that tension, as Mr. Taleb has said here. We try to squeeze the concepts of the world into very crisp categories and very neat ideas, when in fact the business that we work in is actually a very, very messy business. The ideas are messy, and it's not something that we can squash into reductive categories. So essentially what we're doing is we're reducing our candidate pool by doing this, but we're not actually necessarily hiring better people for it. Okay, and there's a reason for that. So information technology, cloud security, all of these things are very much wicked problems, okay? And wicked problem is something that isn't easily defined. So if you think of a problem that we hire manual labor for, making widgets, for example, we can define it. The problem is we need to make a widget, and there's a very defined, clearly defined process from end to end. The people we hire in our industry aren't widget makers. They are very much problem solvers, and they solve wicked problems that don't have obvious solutions. If they had obvious solutions, we wouldn't need to hire these people. Okay. The other thing about wicked problems is the way that you define the problem very much defines the outcome and the solution. So how do we overcome this, and how do we think about it? So what I'm suggesting is there is no more complex a career out there than being an astronaut. Okay, but what we can't do is we can't go to Indeed.com and say, hey, I'm looking for an astronaut and must have 5 previous years of going to space, because the people aren't out there. The candidates aren't out there. And that's how we need to rearrange how we think about this. So when we recruit an astronaut, what we're actually asking for is, hey, we need to find people that have resiliency. Do they persevere? Do they use their best abilities to remain productive in what they do? Can they adapt to different situations? As IT professionals, this is what we're asking our smart people to do. We need them to be adaptable. We need them to be curious about the new technologies so we can pivot when those new technologies turn and they come to us. We need the ability to trust in our team. And these characteristics I'm showing you actually come directly from the Mars One website. So if you go to Mars One, I think they're probably still up there. What they will say is, if you have an interest in having a career in being an astronaut, these are the traits that we look for, because you can't find astronaut experience. We have to train them to do it. And that's exactly what the Federal Cyber Reskilling Academy did last year when they created these cohorts of people, and they started to realize that this might actually be a real thing. So they went out to the government as a whole, not just into technology, and they said, we want to take this concept that there are people out there that have the right personal traits. And you know what? Information security can be learned, or cloud architecture can be learned. If you've got the right traits and the right approach to your subject matter, these things can be instructed, we can be assessed, and we can make sure that we can track them through the learning process. So, am I suggesting that we throw the rule book out the window and get people with no experience? Absolutely not. But what I'm saying is, instead of hamstringing ourselves by creating such a heavy laundry list of technical skills and abilities that we end up excluding many, many good people that actually may have the ability to thrive in the position, that we actually spend less time talking about skills and more time talking about traits. Because when you have a platform, and obviously I'm biased because Pluralsight has a platform which is enabled by artificial intelligence that allows us to help people develop skills and give them speed to skills, it puts you in a position where you can actually find the right kind of people you want, where you can find the expert generalists, if you like, the people that have the breadth of skills to bring to a problem, to be creative problem solvers without being hampered by having all of this domain specific knowledge. Okay. And that's really what I wanted to do, is I wanted to help people understand that a narrow scope will exclude talent. There are very few Goldilocks candidates out there, and we're risking lost opportunity here. Analogical breadth is as important as depth when solving messy problems with novel and creative solutions. We need to understand that skill adjacencies, our life experience, and everything else we bring to the job are as critical to cloud and cybersecurity as going in deep. And if you can use platforms that give you that continual learning and that continual awareness of where your people stand, you can actually approach that and understand and grow people just like you grow astronauts, just like you grow people that need to be creative problem solvers. And whilst I understand that it was only a very brief overview of what I wanted to talk about, hopefully I've managed to get across that, again, I'm not looking to say you should shake it up and throw the rule book out the window. I'm simply saying that there are other things that we need to take into account more often when we're hiring people in our industry. I think over to Tom.
Thank you, Tony. I think we talk tech at ATARC a lot. One of the main things we're trying to do is the reskilling, because if you don't have people skilled to do this great technology, you're not getting anywhere. Thank you very much. That was Tony Holmes, Practice Lead for Solutions Architecture, Public Sector at Pluralsight.
Okay, are we ready to go here? Great. So my name is Katie Warren. I work for the MITRE Corporation, and today we are going to be discussing how cloud migration in this environment works for the federal government. Before we actually get started, the first thing I would like to do is introduce our panel members for today's discussion. So first up, I'd like to introduce Justin Brunel. Justin works for the MITRE Corporation. He's been with MITRE since about 2010. He has a PhD in computer science. He's been our ATARC liaison for quite a number of years, and he's very interested in emerging technologies, including things like cloud computing, big data, mobile, Internet of Things, digital preservation, web archiving, areas of that interest. So welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Katie. Happy to be here.
Next up, we have welcome, Justin. Next up, we have Chris Chilbert. Chris is the CIO for the HHS Office of the Inspector General. Chris has led the adoption of cloud technologies to support personal computing, data analytics, application modernization for HHS. HHS's cloud implementation employs an innovative TIC architecture that maximizes performance and security and allows our workforce to remain fully productive as they've shifted 100% to telework due to the coronavirus situation. So welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Katie.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Good, thank you. Oh yes, very well, thank you. Next up, we have Skip Jentz. Skip is an IT products manager at GSA. His GSA schedule, he is the GSA schedule lead for cloud products and cloud-focused labor hours listed on the GSA schedule cloud special item number 518310C. So Skip is our resident federal government bureaucracy expert. So welcome, Skip.
Thank you, Katie. Glad to be here.
Next up, we have Yifan Yang. Yifan is from USAID. She is the compliance manager there. And as such, she's also, by the way, the US, I'm sorry, go ahead. Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Yifan. So in addition to being the compliance manager, she's also the USAID agency liaison for Fedramp. She's led multiple Fedramp sponsorships for vendors, and she manages over 20 agency Fedramp and cloud systems. Since the COVID-19 situation, she's led the risk compliance review for new agency cloud solutions. So welcome, Yifan.
Thank you, Katie.
All right. We also have David Waltermeyer. David is the supervisory IT specialist and technical lead for Open Security Control Assessment Language, or OSCAL, and he is the lead for standards and outreach for the NIST Security Automation Program. His experience revolves around the development of data standards for representing security and risk management information that allows agencies and vendors to support security processes more efficiently and effectively using automation. So David will be our security expert on the panel for today. So welcome, David.
Thank you.
We have Adam Grant with us as well. Adam is the Director for Infrastructure Optimization Center of Excellence for GSA. As such, he's been directing enterprise IT infrastructure optimization efforts across multiple partner agencies. He's also helped federal agencies implement mission-critical service frameworks. So welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. And then finally, we have David Holmes. I'm sorry, I apologize. Tony Holmes. I'm sorry, Tony. I apologize for that.
No problem.
Tony is the senior manager solutions architect for public sector. He's a certified Oracle Cloud architect, and he's been solving complex technology problems for at least 2 decades for very forward-leaning technology organizations, including the British Broadcasting Corporation, Microsoft Research, HP, Oracle Cloud, and currently Pluralsight. He currently helps government organizations understand how they're able to improve their speed to skills using technical tools that are driven by AI and machine learning and enable strategic insights with skills gap analysis and skills gap remediation. So, Tony, thank you very much and welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right. So for our panel discussion today, just to level set everyone, our goal today was to focus on how cloud-related services and technologies enable mission support throughout unexpected and potentially long-term disaster incidents, such as what we're facing right now. But we could also include other instances as well. We would like to explore how crises, including our current situation, would change how cloud-related services either enable the continuation of government missions during a crisis, or how the crisis itself may create the recognition and need for the adoption of IT modernization to ensure things going forward. So just for everybody's understanding, that's the scope of what we're going to be discussing today. All right, so let me kick it off with a question just to get things started. But of course, during this conversation, if those of you on the phone have questions, please, by all means, jump in, because we want this to be a very interactive session today, okay? So what I'd like to do, I'd like to start with particularly our government panelists and open the floor with this question. What does cloud-related technology actually enable for your organization during unexpected, unplanned, or emergency circumstances and events? Could be a natural disaster, could be the COVID situation we're going through right now. So I'd like to open the floor with that question. So is anyone interested in jumping in for me?
I don't start.
No. Go ahead, please.
So the answer for that for me is 2 parts. Speaking from the GSA perspective and kind of carrying on what Dom said earlier in his keynote, the existence of generally available cloud services enabled us to pivot very effectively as new challenges came around, specifically with the COVID-19 challenges. A beautiful example on the GSA side would be COVID.gov website, which was put together very, very quickly, built on top of cloud native services like Fedramp for hosting and search.gov for the internal search mechanism, integrating into the CDC's data as a service features to create a dynamically evolving live websites that could handle, especially initially, incredible amount of traffic for a site that was less than 2 days old, and was being used at the front end of the administration's communication efforts to the public as they were dealing with the pandemic. none of that would have been possible without the generally available standardized services that already existed in government and their ability to pivot. From my perspective as a COE lead, having watched and having assisted multiple agencies as they dealt with these challenges themselves, and having had a lot of my general cloud adoption and optimization and modernization efforts shift focus very, very quickly. In the organization where standardized services were already implemented and were already sustained, scaling up and shifting was really much easier than in places that had to deal with scale up in traditional manners. So my general 2 cents here would be, once you've established a standardized service within your organization, shifting for emergencies become much more doable, much cheaper, much less dangerous.
Right, less risky. Yeah, that's a really good point. So Yifan, I'm really interested in what USAID experienced through all this. Particularly, you mentioned the Fedramp connection. Have there been security risks, changes to operations, anything like that associated with, for example, so many people so quickly having to move to remote work and those kinds of things?
So I think from USAID perspective, we handled this entire COVID-19 telework case very well, because we have moved our entire GSS to AWS cloud, and currently we have 2 main cloud infrastructure as a service platform that we use, and also the both Azure and AWS. So we support telework 100%, and also we also have support different missions, and I believe like over 100 missions in USA, and all the mission critical personnel, they be able to basically log into our GSS and continue their telework. So I think we've been practiced before the entire COVID-19 was hitting US, so it doesn't really impact us in a big ways, I would say. So from my perspective, my team, we review a lot of Fedramp package and also products that we can use to support COVID-19. One of the tools that we are reviewing are WebEx and Zones, and a couple other technology to see if we can host meeting and large meeting basically, and support the entire effort. If that answers your question.
And I know you guys operate in a wide geographic swath. So I'm curious if geography played a role in any of this, or if there were challenges in some places, not in others, or timing
Yes.
issues because, as it spread.
Yes, we run into issues in that end. So it's harder for us to implement Fedramp solution, and asking missions to basically use Fedramp solutions, because in some country, the internet and the service, it doesn't support. So in some cases, we have to review some of the vendor package that's not Fedramp, and then review the risks, and then see if we be able to allow the use of the product within the agency.
Right. So, Justin, how would you say that MITRE responded, and how well do you think that we did, and how well do you think the services and things have stood up to the idea of going from almost zero to 8,000 people in 24 hours, moving to online and remote work?
Yeah, so I think what you're seeing, including not only MITRE but also within the government, is this slow shift to sustaining operations in a cloud environment has really paid off. You're seeing the elasticity, you're seeing the malleability of services. Once there was the big demand for migrating everything in a very, very short time frame into those online and remotely hosted environments, that the preparatory work ahead of this really paid off. Similar to what Yifan said, talking about distributed work that was already going on, and the increased demand from a sudden shift, you're really seeing a lot of the policies set in place, a lot of the preparatory work that is benefiting that overall response. So, Katie, as you know, right, and as some of our government sponsors understand, we really didn't see a significant reduction. Most of it was that cultural shift to understanding that things are going to have to be online, right? And hopefully by now, everybody on this call at least is adapting well to virtual meetings and able to provide that continuity of work going forward.
I have
If I can
noticed,
chime in. Yes.
please.
Yes, to respond to you. So USA, we have implemented that all staff, including missions staff, are required to have a laptop instead of desktop, and that's been done years ago. So when we came out a policy that all employee needs to telework, and everyone have a GFE, be able to work straight from home without relying on a desktop.
Yeah, I think the single biggest infrastructure thing that MITRE had to contend with was I should say many of our employees, probably in the couple of hundred range, already had corporate issued iPhones that could connect and had services on them and apps on them that specifically connected them to the company. But they did go out and issue everyone in the company, right down to even our brand new interns, iPhones in order to help with our infrastructure and ability to connect in, and alternatives, in case something happened to your laptop, for example. So that was probably the single biggest infrastructure initiative we had to do, and it took a couple of weeks to get that going. But almost everybody already had laptops, might have already had ways to connect in remotely. So it was more a question of the scale than it was of the actual, capabilities that were already in place at the time. Hey, Tony, I'm curious. I don't know from your background if you were actually actively working with the BBC or anyone else, say in Europe, throughout all of this, but I do notice that you've got a lot of background with large commercial agencies. I'm
Yep.
curious if there was something that you saw on the commercial side that might be different than what we saw on, say, the federal government side in response to this emergency situation.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think basically the federal government and the DoD are customers of ours. Essentially, what we do, if you're not familiar with our platform, is we provide remote learning, but we also provide strategic insight. So in essence, we provide real-time strategic analysis of skill gaps within an organization. But the other thing that we can do using that analysis is we can compress the time to skill up. So what happened when the pandemic initially hit, we found ourselves in a position where a lot of our existing customers that were already mid cloud migration, so people like DHS, for example, who have a very large cloud initiative at the moment, were able to essentially take the resources and the platform that we offer and immediately transition to home. Obviously, we're actually inside AWS ourselves. Our infrastructure is built on AWS. And one of the most important things that we were able to do in responding to this crisis, and we're always able to do, is we can provide this upskilling and reskilling across a variety of platforms. So you were just talking about having iPhones to access, having laptops to access, and because we can deploy across all of these platforms, it meant that a lot of our federal customers were immediately able to, if you like, fill fill areas that they wanted to upskill their employees in these areas of downtime when they were working from home, and pivot to allow them to focus on that. And with the insight, the data insight that we give them, understand how they were progressing in order to be able to fulfill the skills they needed to address these new initiatives that the pandemic brought about. So in essence, like I said, our platform, its job is to help people develop speed to skills. And that's exactly what we were able to do as soon as everybody ended up working from home and found themselves in that position. So I feel extremely grateful to have been able to assist the government in that respect.
Did you see any significant changes between the government approach versus, say, a large corporation and their approach in the commercial sector as opposed to the government sector?
I don't think so. I think it was really positive, and I was very encouraged by the response, because the government actually responded in exactly the way that you would expect a commercial organization. They took the problem head on, and they understood that there were things that needed to change, and they wanted to understand how they could address those. So they pivoted, and the government, in my opinion, has responded just as efficiently and quickly as you would expect any private organization to do. So again, that was very encouraging and very heartening. And it just goes to show that the government is absolutely 100% invested in being able to pivot with crises just as much as private organizations are. And they're the people leading these changes and leading the charge against the pandemic, if you will, are extremely capable people. So no, absolutely not. I'm seeing, if anything, I'm seeing just as much, if not better, in many cases, response.
Good. Well, so on that note, that's a great introduction. So to Chris Chilbert, question for you. So, A, would you agree with that assessment? And B, what do you think were the maybe top challenges or top solutions or whatever that really helped the government be so capable to respond so rapidly?
I would agree with that assessment. And for us, it was the investments that we had been making over several years that allowed us to pivot to 100% telework very, very rapidly. If this had happened 5 or 6 years ago, I don't think it would have been successful, at least in our organization. And so it's investments in things like a virtual private network, VPN, and making sure that you have enough capacity for the whole workforce, and not just the workforce, but the workforce with multiple devices. Similar to MITRE, we had issued iPhones to every single employee. That wasn't something that was the standard practice a few years ago, but one of the things I had pointed out to some of our more experienced leaders when I came in was that our folks coming into the workforce have never ever in their lives used a landline in many cases, and that's not going to change, right? And so we had many desk phones across the country that had never been used. Other things, a virtual desktop environment in the cloud. So when everybody's working from home, they're not able to walk around the corner and go to a service desk and swap out their laptop. So we have to rely on a supply chain infrastructure that is totally stressed. UPS, FedEx, there's delays. So what we were able to do in some cases, if someone's down, is can you stand up a secure virtual desktop, provide two-factor authentication so they can access it via a personal computer. And in a few cases, that helped. And I actually I tested it out myself, and I found that the performance was better and better through my personal computer than it was through my work one. And my work one is pretty good. So it's things like that help the workforce. I think from a technology perspective, that was the easier transition for folks. The harder transition was for people who are not used to teleworking, and then if you're like my case, when all of a sudden now I have 3 kids in the house trying to do school at the same time, and many mornings we had 5 separate conferences between my wife and my 3 kids, 5 separate video teleconferences. We're fortunate enough, I guess maybe me being in technology, to have made personal investments in technology that allowed us to support that. So But again, the things that you've seen government doing, moving to cloud-based email and productivity systems, investing in bigger VPN, and then I guess finally the thing that if you've followed the news and you saw with HHS, there was a large denial of service attack that came against the government, and I can't say much beyond which was in the press, but the fact that we have solutions such as the MTIP solution for trusted internet connection that helped allow our agencies to be able to handle that pretty well.
So, and let me ask you this question, specifically because you are a CIO. When you're making these investment decisions, how much of the thought process includes the potential for some sort of emergency situation like this? How much of it is deliberate preparation, and how much of it is benefit, but perhaps unintended benefit, just because of the decisions you're making about things like moving to cloud? So I'm wondering how much of this is really deliberate and factors into the decision-making process within the government.
I would say that, again, I had not anticipated 100% telework with having offices across the country. So we're not a huge agency. We're about between 16 and 1,700 people, but we're in over 80 cities. And I never would have imagined a scenario that all of our offices would not be accessible for a period of time. However, we are a workforce that does a lot of our work remotely. We have a large law enforcement contingent. Auditors, although they do work in the office, they go out and they visit the places that they audit. Just like the rest of our employees. And so we had made a big emphasis on enabling people to work remotely for a long time. The other aspect of it, we made a big emphasis on making sure that we had resilience, right? So again, maybe it wasn't so much supporting a shutdown of every physical field office as much it was providing redundancy for the core network. So several years ago, we did not have that redundancy. If one, the network hub was located in a data center within a federal office building, and that was affected by challenges within that office building, electrical outages and everything like that. So when we moved it into a commercial Tier 4 data center with industrial class systems and having a East Coast and West Coast presence, that allowed us to have the redundancy for all of those critical systems. So a lot of it was just investing in redundancy, availability, performance, and then making sure every employee could work remotely, and that really allowed us to weather this pretty well.
Yeah, well, good for you guys. And yes, I mean, I'm well aware you've been in the news a lot, not only for the data breach, but just generally speaking. So, and I know you guys have had to work really, really hard throughout the recent pandemic. A lot of the activities have fallen on your shoulders. So thank you for that.
Yep.
So, all right. I think I have not had a chance to hear from Adam. Is that correct? I think we've heard from everyone else. So Adam, I'm curious about your viewpoints.
I'd actually jumped in right in the beginning.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. That was you. I just haven't heard from you in a while. So
I have a few thoughts I'd love to share.
Oh, okay. Sure. Please do so. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed you. I apologize. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, a lot of my work at NIST is about enabling technologies that can help support improving the security of IT systems. And one of the things we haven't talked much about today is, in addressing a crisis, organizations often have to expand and deploy new capabilities, but we need to do that in a way that preserves security and that enhances that preserves the privacy of the systems that are being deployed. And that in order to do that effectively and in a fairly agile way, it requires organizations to be able to take what they currently know about the systems that they have, the threats that they face, and to be able to quickly apply that knowledge to the changing environment that they're working to deploy. And I think that's a significant challenge for a lot of organizations today. At NIST, we're working on a project where called OSCAL, the Open Security Controls Assessment Language, where we're developing standardized data models that allow organizations to represent information about the controls that they support, how they're implemented in their systems, and how those need to be assessed in order to support more automation. And really what we're trying to do through this project is really three things. We're trying to free data in a way by providing structured machine-readable representations of security information to allow it to be easily exchanged between tools. So that organizations can actually use that information to address security and privacy concerns in cyber-relevant timeframes. That allows them to have increased situational awareness over their IT systems, helps them understand the architecture, the organization, and the components of the system, and how change is going to affect them. And the structured information also supports more automation and analytics. It allows computers to effectively do what they're good at, which is counting things and finding inconsistencies and gaps in data. And it allows humans then to focus on interpreting those findings and understanding what the impact is and how organizations have to respond to that. But the problem we have often in organizations today, and this is exacerbated by crises, is that humans don't have the time to do what they're good at because they're often doing the things that computers are good at. So, in a time of crisis, organizations need enhanced situational awareness to help them guide their responses. And to adequately plan for a crisis, organizations need to be able to analyze gaps, explore what-if scenarios, but they often don't have time because they're too busy working on other aspects of the risk management program. So OSCAL is working to standardize how control and assessment information is expressed and exchanged as a way to improve on these situations.
Yeah. And I had a specific question I was going to ask you as well.
Okay.
So all of that is really good information. And I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I actually, by the way, just so you know, a good friend of mine is Mari Spina, and at MITRE, she's considered to be one of our cloud cybersecurity leading experts, and she is very, very excited about OSCAL. So we're hearing some very, very good things coming out of what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
But you're more than welcome, and thank you. I had a slightly specific question that I particularly wanted to ask you because of your risk management background. So I'm curious if you've seen any, how should I put this, any reassessment of risks that are different in an emergency environment like what we're facing now compared to what I'll call a quote unquote normal environment pre-COVID, in terms of either the way that leadership thinks about and assesses them and therefore changes their decision-making processes moving forward, or the way they're looking at the risks of moving to cloud, or if there's a it's not just the technical differences, but it's the cultural, behavioral, decision-making differences associated with things like what cloud is capable of doing or using it in these kinds of situations.
I think some of the other panelists that work in more of an operational context might have interesting views on that question. So one of the things that I focus a lot on is security, IT operations, and privacy personnel within organizations. They have a lot to do on a normal day when there isn't a crisis going on, and when a crisis hits, that just drags further constraints. It drags them in other directions. That further thins the time that they have, and that the sort of push and shove of that means that something has to give, and we want to make sure that what isn't being sacrificed is a deep understanding of how IT change is affecting the security and privacy of systems. We want to make sure that the infrastructure that's used to manage systems can also help support the communication, the enhanced decision making that is necessary to properly allow leadership to navigate the risks that are faced in a given crisis. And so a lot of my work is actually trying to break down the technological barriers that prevent that from happening.
Right, right. So those on the line who are more in the operational mode, what do you guys think? Have you seen changes in the way you approach or your compatriots approach um, risk assessment and decision making?
This is Ifan. I can speak to that because during COVID-19, my team, we had done tons of risk assessment against a lot of cloud solutions. And in USAID, we have come up with a list of critical controls that we can immediately take a look at the solution and see if they're complying with those controls. And then we can make a risk decision from there if we are going to deploy the solution. And then next step will be ATO the solution and implement the entire control baseline. But to basically make this process go a lot fast because the need of COVID-19, we definitely start with a first step, which is looking at the critical controls. So I think for agency to identify critical controls for your agency as a first step, it's important and it helps through the process.
Oh, interesting, interesting. Okay. Actually, and Skip, have you by any chance seen any sort of change? Given your role at GSA, I'm imagining, correct me if I'm wrong, that you'd be in a position to see this. But have you seen any sort of change in what GSA is seeing in terms of acquisitions or cloud adoption or anything like that in recent months?
We have. We're onboarding vendors at a continuous pace. We're also helping agencies figure out how to acquire cloud from the vendors listed on GSA schedule. The change we've noticed over the past few months, virus aside, is that we have a lot more vendors offering the labor category, the labor hours necessary to perform a cloud migration. And the character of those labor hours is changing. Where before we used to see, project manager or analyst, cloud project manager, cloud analyst. Now we're seeing these proposals being much more specific. People are calling out the specific stages of a cloud migration. They're calling out their certifications that they possess, that they've earned from the various CSPs. It's getting much more specific, and I am hopeful that industry, therefore, is responding to demand that they want from government demand, that they want these kinds of services, and they want to learn from their mistakes if they've made any. Look at the very few new articles that are talking about a retreat from cloud, which I'm sure is due to some kind of faulty requirements analysis that was done up front. The agencies are more than willing to get down and be in the weeds and be much more specific about the types of skills that they're looking for. Now, whether the market can furnish those skills on a grand scale is another question. Gosh, it's been so hard to hire good IT people way before cloud. So hopefully that'll change with time.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this is a result of things like COVID, or do you think this is a result of just, gradually learning more over time, or maybe it's, combination of both? You mentioned a moment ago about hopefully, learning from your mistakes. Is that a long-term improvement that you see continuously optimizing?
Yeah, it's long
I
term
mean, I'm
because the
asking you.
acquisition process it's such a long lead time that all of this labor hour changes have come about over the past few months, way before the virus came about. As far as the virus itself, GSA has been a leader in remote working for many years, collapsing real estate leases into collapsing buildings into buildings, moving more people into the same building. We were teleworking 2-3 days a week. It was a snap to go to 5 days a week.
Well, good for you guys. I'm glad you were. It sounds like you were very well prepared for it in the first place.
If I could say a few things about the
So
supply
I'd
chain question.
Please do.
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges that organizations have, both inside and outside a crisis, is really understanding. So when you're looking at a new technology, that you're investigating maybe early in the acquisitions process, or that your agency is acquired, you need to understand the security and privacy properties of that technology, and I think there's actually one lesson learned is, organizations invest a lot in personnel, in time, in understanding those security properties, and organizations are often having to comb through manuals, online documentation, talk to security engineers, sales engineering, for that product vendor. I think there's more that vendors could be doing to help organizations to understand the security properties of the hardware, software, and services that they're buying. The Fedramp process is definitely doing a lot to improve that. By addressing some of ensuring that services that are provided through Fedramp address some basic security requirements, and we're working actually quite a bit with Fedramp on the OSCAL project to support that. But I think there's more that that vendors, that providers of open source software and others, could be doing to make their offerings be more self-describing about the security properties, and privacy properties that they're providing, and that's something that we're working to address through OSCAL, that will enable those organizations to define what controls are implemented within their products in a machine-readable way, that will help to eliminate the need for the research, the high bandwidth, high costly conversations that organizations have to have with product vendors when they're acquiring new technologies. And so I think there's work to do there, but I think there's a lot that we can improve on in that space.
Question for you, because I've run across this myself. I've seen some agencies just sort of assume that their data requires a certain level of control and not go through the process of doing the analysis. Are you saying that we can improve that process so that they can better match what they need to establish as the requirements in the first place? And then vendors can also offer their descriptions better so that the matchup can happen more quickly?
Yeah, I think if we're smarter.
Is that the goal that you have?
Yes, I think if we're smarter about how both the vendor and the agency provides information about the product or the system, that it's going to be implemented in, we can allow computers to do more of the analytic work, more of the legwork to understand the security properties and the impact and the potential threats and risks to an organization. If that information is locked away in 3-ring binders, it's really difficult to do any improvement there. But if we can get the data structured in the right ways, then we can apply a variety of different analytic techniques to really help to give security personnel the the analytics they need to actually be successful at doing their jobs. They're being asked to do a lot, and I think if we can allow computers to do the things that they're good at, we can then enable those experts to do more of the things that they're good at, which will actually help improve security and privacy for organizations.
Well, that's really interesting. Thank you. So we literally have about 30 seconds left. So let me go around real quick and ask if anybody has any just quick last nickels that they want to contribute to the conversation. So Justin, any final thoughts?
No, thank you guys for participating. Thanks for allowing me to be a part of this.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us, Justin. I really appreciate it. Chris Chilbert?
No, I just say that again, cloud I think is the future, and I think agencies should be looking how to migrate and move to the cloud smartly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your
Thanks for having me.
Skip Jens, how about you? Any final thoughts?
No, thanks for having me. I'm not wearing shoes.
Skip, thank you for your openness and your honesty. I really appreciate it. And by the way, I do a fair amount of work with GSA, and I want to say you guys have some great people over there. So thank you for joining us today. Yifan,
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Any final thoughts? Oh, you're welcome. Yifan, any final thoughts from USAID?
Yeah, thank you for having me today. Basically, I think my final thought will be a lot of people, when they hear the word Fedramp, they are automatically thinking we can go ahead and purchase the service and we are safe. But based on so many Fedramp packages that have been reviewed, I think that there's definitely improvement needs, and agency, when it comes to purchase Fedramp service, we definitely have the implementing risk analysts in place to analyze all the vulnerability and the pollen from Fedramp side before we decide to purchase the service.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's really good advice. And thanks for your time today. We really appreciate you joining us. Okay, what about, let's see, David Waltmeyer?
Nothing more from me. Thank you for the opportunity to address the audience and to speak with my fellow panelists. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for joining us. And Adam Grant, any final thoughts?
First, thank you again. This has been a pleasure. I think a common theme here, especially when it comes to being able to pivot in a disaster, is the existence of those standardized services. If they exist if the agency, if you've put in the effort years before, when something happens, you can actually change. And I think we have multiple agencies here, and they both echo the same value. So hopefully we will see the same level of commitment from agencies as we continue to move forward. Thank you.
Hopefully, and thank you as well for your time. And once again, let me echo, GSA is a great place. And then finally, and certainly last but not least, how about Tony Holmes?
Hi, thank you. No, I wanted to thank everybody again. It was a really interesting panel, lots of interesting questions and lots of insight. I guess the only thing to say is that if you want to see how we do the skill gap analytics and things like that, we do have a virtual booth today in the ATARC cloud event today in the cloud showcase. So if you want to swing by and see Pluralsight, we're right there in the virtual booth.
Oh, well, good to know. And thanks for mentioning that. I appreciate it. And appreciate your time. And as biased as I know this is going to sound, I can't help myself. I simply love your accent. Thank you.
Thank you. That's fortunate. It's the
all
only
right.
one I've
So
got.
with that, all right. So with that, I think that concludes this panel. So once again, thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Tom Welsh from Palo Alto Networks, here to discuss just a few of the ways industry is supporting federal cloud migration within today's virtual summit theme of federal emergency response. First, some context for today's discussion. The 2017 report to the President on IT modernization envisioned a world where agencies are able to maximize secure use of the cloud while modernizing and securely maintaining legacy applications. The Cloud Smart mandate updated cloud first guidance to focus on actionable interdisciplinary ways to accelerate cloud adoption, covering pillars of security, procurement, and workforce to provide return on investment, enhanced security, and higher quality citizen services. With 2019's milestone TIC 3.0 draft guidance, we've adopted a dynamic, adaptable, risk-based descriptive approach to reconciling OMB direction with desired IT modernization outcomes, while still supporting prior TIC investments. This year's TIC complementary telework guidance recognizes that current events have underscored the need to rapidly support a remote federal workforce with secure and efficient access to the cloud. Even after we phase back into shared workspaces, we'll likely see lasting changes in how people get work done, and current events underscore the need to support continuity of government imperatives. The term cloud is often used broadly to describe a range of services offered by cloud and managed service providers, systems integrators, and security solution providers like Palo Alto Networks. For today's discussion, we'll focus on modernizing network access and securing SaaS applications. Commercially available networking and security technologies were designed for specific use cases that may not be cloud-oriented and also may not easily adapt to new scenarios. We may have a variety of technologies such as VPNs, web proxies, cloud access security brokers, and a variety of user locations from physical locations to mobile. However, maybe our SaaS security tools focus on approved or known applications, or we're unable to apply common policies to all users regardless of their location, or maybe the applications aren't secured at all. In the federal scenario, we have a traditional TIC to provide common perimeter-based security. The challenges such as tromboning of traffic and support for cloud adoption are well-known drivers for needed TIC modernization. Even with the flexibility afforded by TIC 3.0, we still have the challenge of providing common policies throughout our policy enforcement points and planning a phased cloud migration path that leverages TIC 3.0, yet aligns with still valid TIC 2.2 use cases and investments. Negative consequences start with the user, from poor user experience to remote access and SaaS applications, to impacting continuity of government, to inadvertently encouraging shadow IT or bypassing of security controls. We see inconsistent policy enforcement, whether between cloud or enterprise tools or between prior investments and emerging policy enforcement point capabilities. Complexity is the enemy of security and a driver of cost, with the additional hidden costs of complexity is exacerbating the federal IT workforce skills gap identified in Cloud Smart. All of this leads to barriers to federal IT modernization and cloud adoption. It's helpful to think about our desired future state to ensure that secure access and SaaS capabilities support visibility and agency security policy while migrating to the cloud or supporting a remote federal workforce. Both draft TIC 3.0 and complementary interim telework guidance prompted by current events provide guidance to support the cloud-enabled mobile workforce. Teleworker network security patterns provide access to sanctioned cloud service providers, the web, or selected resources at agency campus locations. It is important to design a model with these security patterns in mind and enforce policy by user and application versus being constrained by the infrastructure at various locations. The Cloud Connected branch covers agencies with personnel in more than one location with similar network security patterns. Similarly, designing with these patterns in mind versus the constraints of legacy infrastructure allows us to scale operations or to new agency locations required to support mission needs and leverage emerging technologies such as SD-WAN. To support the philosophy of zero trust, we also need the right foundation. It's no longer simply a matter of categorizing the data, building a perimeter boundary around it, and trusting who's inside. We need to define trust not by location, but by application attributes, whether in the secure access to the enterprise or to SaaS applications themselves, and the data that they have access to, and be able to handle a range of scenarios from users of SaaS applications that are agency sanctioned to those that are unknown or lack robust APIs. An agency's governance and compliance policies need to cover not only locally installed application, but a range of internet accessible SaaS applications as well. Appropriate visibility and control are critical to ensure that we understand which applications are sanctioned, potentially tolerated, are deemed risky and should be prohibited. After establishing governance and compliance controls for the SaaS applications, we need to then protect the data on an ongoing basis to ensure that sensitive information isn't inadvertently shared inappropriately or otherwise subjected to new risks. To support this desired future state, we need a strong architectural framework. For Palo Alto Networks Prisma, our foundation for cloud-delivered security is the Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE model, as defined by Gartner. SASE is the convergence of wide area networking, the network security services like CASB, Firewall as a Service, and Zero Trust into a single cloud-delivered security model. According to Gartner, SASE capabilities are delivered as a service based on the identity of the entity, real-time context, enterprise security/compliance policies, and the continuous assessment of risk/trust through the sessions. SASE may be thought of as providing both a secure network connectivity layer and a security services layer. At the connectivity layer, we need to utilize the broad network access and rapid elasticity essential characteristics of cloud to support users at scale from global locations with different access technologies available and provide consistent security, not only for users in this context, but for also when they may be at traditional agency campus locations. We may use IPsec, SSL, or clientless VPN technologies, clean pipes for large enterprises, or SD-WAN to more flexibly support agency branch locations without requiring a traditional WAN backhaul, such as MPLS, to the agency campus and traditional TIC gateway. At this security service layer, we want to ensure that we have a range of capabilities available to mitigate risk and address policy enforcement point security capabilities chosen by the agency to address TIC 3.0 guidance. For example, foundational technologies to identify and enforce policies for users and applications that are consistent with next generation firewall investments, such as those found at traditional agency perimeters that can be managed with the same tools and support a zero trust philosophy. Included security subscriptions to address known and unknown threats, relying on the power of the cloud for dynamic analysis versus legacy appliance-based sandboxes and URL filtering. This service layer can also work with SaaS application security and other security tools. As people can work from anywhere, we need a seamless user experience regardless of how they connect. The security policies for mobile users must be consistent with the rest of the agency across a simplified network architecture, not constrained by what a separate VPN replacement solution may offer. For example, a cloud-enabled firewall as a service solution should have the same policies and management platform as users accessing resources via the agency campus or branch locations. This should not only cloud-enable the workforce, but itself leverage the cloud and its essential characteristic of rapid elasticity. Mobile user volume varies, and as we recently saw, sometimes needs to support a surge to handle all users. Traditional hardware-based solutions or even cloud-delivered solutions that rely on co-located data center hardware simply cannot scale rapidly or automatically based on changing demand or user locations. We want the same consistent policies and rapid elasticity for branch locations. In a TIC 3.0 model, we can deploy appropriate policy enforcement point security policies to our branch locations to avoid backhauling traffic to a traditional TIC gateway. This avoids the tromboning of traffic and the associated poor user experience. This also provides more network connectivity options to include SD-WAN solutions where traditional MPLS backhaul may be undesirable or costly. While remote users can work from a branch facility using the same technology as they may from home, connecting the branch facility itself allows us to secure IoT devices, printers, and other resources. The preceding two sets of capabilities map directly to draft TIC 3.0 use cases and are supported by Prisma Access, the cloud-delivered SASE firewall as a service platform from Palo Alto Networks. For agencies moving towards a zero trust philosophy, it is imperative to ensure the architectural decisions to support remote and branch users also support zero trust in the cloud. As we move away from trusting users based on their location, we shouldn't now simply application to a SaaS application. Rather, we should provide adaptive access to applications based on the agency's risk posture and contextual controls based on the user and device state. Unfortunately, with the cloud, a lot of traffic is often not inspected. Accessing the cloud via an agency's traditional VPN may simply limit who can connect to the agency network, and some VPN replacement solutions focus on web or file transfer protocol inspection only. We need to inspect all traffic and apply threat prevention controls to malicious content and protections to control access to and the movement of data to ensure that we have proper visibility and analysis to manage risk. We need to look at our applications to address risks to normal operations as well as potential shadow IT situations. It's helpful to think about applications as sanctioned, tolerated, or unsanctioned. Sanctioned applications are approved, supported by IT, and are necessary to support the mission. In one sense, they may be the easiest to address as they are highly visible, used by many employees, and may have robust API support. Tolerated applications, however, may be used for specific use cases and still require visibility and control to ensure that they are used properly. Then we have unsanctioned applications that really don't have a legitimate business purpose. These may introduce significant risks to an agency. We want to make sure that agency governance and compliance policies cover not just SaaS applications, but how they're being used, as effective risk management in the cloud requires a combination of content and context. Just because an application is sanctioned or delivered from a Fedramp authorized cloud doesn't mean that the data is being used properly. In its current state of SaaS summary report, Palo Alto Networks finds that known malware is often delivered by popular and likely sanctioned applications such as Google Drive and OneDrive. Using capabilities like data loss prevention and APIs for our sanctioned applications, we can discover and classify our sensitive data, then monitor, protect, and remediate to reduce the risk of exposure or misuse. The preceding two sets of capabilities are likely future TIC 3.0 use cases that we can support today with Prisma SaaS, working with Prisma Access, a cloud access security broker service from Palo Alto Networks. These services provide a comprehensive security, access, and SaaS solution that can assist agencies in a phased and multifaceted cloud migration strategy. These capabilities support better business outcomes for federal agencies. Agencies can rapidly support a federal remote workforce and ensure continuity of government. And agencies can support agency growth and adoption of new technologies like SD-WAN for branch offices. Agencies can have a consistent security policy across remote users, branch locations, and the existing enterprise, maximizing current investments in the next generation firewalls and providing consistent policy enforcement and ease of migration to the cloud. By reducing complexity of bolt-on solutions and maximizing prior investments, agencies can reduce operational costs and focus cloud-smart workforce development efforts on improving cyber maturity. All of this translates into an improved user experience for the user and improved ability to support the mission. Palo Alto Networks offers a broad range of capabilities to support your agency's migration to the cloud. Today we focused on the topic of secure access and SaaS, and the Palo Alto Networks services of Prisma Access and Prisma SaaS, which may be used with premise-based or cloud-deployed next-generation firewalls to facilitate a phased migration to the cloud in alignment with TIC 3.0, while maximizing prior investments and enforcing a common policy framework regardless of user location. Other capabilities to assist agencies with cloud migrations may include cloud security posture management and cloud workload protection platform to help compliance and security operations teams prioritize risks, quickly respond to issues, and secure cloud environments against vulnerabilities, malware, and compliance violations, whether they be with traditional cloud hosts, containers, or serverless computing environments. These and other professional services can assist agencies with planning and securely migrating to the cloud and supporting new business workflows such as continuous integration, continuous delivery practices with DevSecOps. Thank you.